Okay, let's get started. So thank you so much for joining the public meeting for the Martinez Park Master Plan. We're really excited to be here tonight and share with you all the final preferred conceptual design for the park. So let's dive in. So tonight we are going to be reviewing the alternatives briefly and going over the online survey feedback. We are going to share the final preferred design, ask for feedback in a couple key areas, and also discuss the next steps and schedule for the design and construction of Martinez. So I always like to start with the guiding principles for the effort because this is really what kind of grounds our design and is really based in the community desires and feedback that we receive early on in the process. Many of you, I think, are very familiar with these, but just as a reminder, the four guiding principles are: one, to enhance connections and visibility within the park and to nearby destinations; to activate the park with wellness, health, and educational opportunities; to celebrate the rich cultural heritage of the community and also celebrate Joseph Martinez; and lastly, but certainly not least, to engage with Lakewood Gulch and bring that natural environment to the forefront and to life within the park. So just a reminder of the context of the overall park. The Martinez Park sits within the Villa Park community and is, we have strong kind of stable residential areas surrounding the park, as well as schools such as Cowell Elementary, Eagleton a little bit further away. But this park is really intended to serve the neighborhood and the surrounding community. The three concept alternatives that we shared in the public meeting in February and that we had the survey out about are the three that you see on the screen here. So just kind of a brief recap of each of those. The one on the left, alternative one, was really about play and exploration, so making that the central focus of the park. The second one was the cultural loop, so it really brought the culture of the community to life. We had a memorial plaza for Joseph Martinez on the western edge along Tennyson, and a loop that went around the park that really stitched together the different cultural components and created essentially kind of cultural rooms within the park as you move through it. And the one on the right, the third one, is the water story, where we brought Lakewood Gulch as the central kind of organizing element within the park. So to gather feedback on these three alternatives, we did a lot of public engagement. You can see listed on the screen here everything we did, but a quick recap. Including tonight, we've had 3 public meetings during the process or throughout the process, as well as 5 steering committees. 2 of them were virtual. The first one was out on the site, but that's really helped guide the effort throughout. We've had 2 bilingual online surveys, and we're going to launch a third one tonight on the final preferred concept. We hosted 2 Facebook Live and Zoom events with Councilwoman Torres's office. And I should just pause here to just thank Councilwoman Torres and her office and her staff for the tremendous engagement and effort they have done throughout the process. They not only hosted these events, but they've really worked hard to get community members out, keep them informed and engaged. So a huge thank you to her. We also placed 20 yard signs. Councilwoman Torres's office, again, they mailed over 2,000 postcards to the neighborhood. So that really helped get the word out for those Facebook Live events and allowed us to gather a lot of feedback on the survey that I'll share in just a moment. There were over 1,000 door-to-door flyers. There were meetings, R&O meetings with the MPI process, and then other one-on-one meetings and targeted group meetings. So you can see a lot of engagement. And with all that engagement, it really just speaks to the volume of the survey responses that we got. We had a survey out on the 3 alternatives over the spring and summer, and collectively got over 373 responses in total. So it was a tremendous response. You can see some basic demographic statistics here on the screen. But a few things to highlight on the right are the demographics of the age groups, as well as the ethnicity of those that took the survey. So we got far greater responses from folks in the 18 to 44-year-old range, and we got far more responses by white residents than those that are actually living in the neighborhood. So 70% of the residents are Hispanic, Latino, and only about 25, 26% white. It flipped and we got far more white responses. Now, this is fairly typical and something that we expect in a lot of these surveys. So we just make sure we ask the right questions so we can pull the data apart and get to really those that are representative of the demographics of the neighborhood. We can look at their specific responses, which I'll share in a moment. So when we look at everybody that filled out the survey, this just highlights the programmatic preferences that they shared. So the bar charts on the left show the preferences in the program for each of those design alternatives. And because we know that the ultimate kind of preferred design is a lot of times a blend of all three, we really like to look at each of the programmatic kind of individual pieces of the design to really see what resonated with people. So the list on the right highlights those preferences. So the top preferences were the wetland exploration area, nature play, and the ethnobotanical garden. Those really came to the top. We also had a lot of support for the shade structure, for the modern playground, for cultural art and murals, pavilion and stage, hammock forest, and fitness stations. So this helped guide the design. But then we pulled apart the data to look at the Hispanic and Latino residents specifically that live in Villa Park to see what are the key differences of what they said versus what the entire group said. And what we heard from them was they really had a stronger preference for a modern playground, cultural playground, memorial plaza, as well as a shade structure. So the memorial plaza was important here because it really speaks to what's important within the neighborhood and their overall desires and preferences. As we look at the bigger park context, this came up a lot through the process. And so while the park itself, Martinez Park, is actually the area in kind of the center of the screen with the black outline, we did talk a lot about the gulch areas to the east and the west. And so the master plan will document the thoughts of the community and some key recommendations for those areas. So just to highlight a few specifically, on the west side of the park, so west of Tennyson, the city is working to secure easements through this private property because there's no easement or kind of public access today, technically, so that they can maintain that area. Additionally, Mile High Flood District will be doing tree maintenance and clearing along the waterway. So that's going to happen within the park and also the Lakewood Gulch area to the east of Perry. DPR will also consider incorporating a portion of the land to the east into the Martinez Park boundary. So the area between 10th and Perry, many people actually believed it was part of the park. And you don't really know unless you look at a map, but we heard loud and clearly that people are interested in having this as part of the park boundary. So DPR, that'll be a recommendation out of the plan, and DPR will look into that. So zooming kind of into the core area of the park now, before we get into the details of the design, I just want to highlight what we call as kind of a concept diagram of the park. How do we think about the organizing elements of the park based on what we've heard? And it really comes down to these core components. One being that strong cultural and historic piece, and the other being nature. And together, they bring together the community in the center of the park. So you'll see many of the elements that speak to the history and the culture here on the west, kind of northwest corner. Nature obviously being more aligned with Lakewood Gulch and the community garden. And together they come around this central gathering space, which really is representative kind of the community. So looking at the specifics of the design, and then I'm going to walk through each of the pieces, not only kind of the overall systems within the park, but actually the design character of each of these spaces. But to orient you to the park. So again, on this northwest corner, we have more of the cultural and historic components. We have a strong memorial entry plaza here at 9th and Tennyson that celebrates Joseph Martinez. It also has a large shade structure that kind of overlooks this multi-use lawn, but is also multifunctional and serves as a gathering space within the plaza itself. Adjacent to that, we have a cultural and signature playground. We have multi-sports court and fitness stations below with pollinator gardens wrapping around this area. On the north side here, the sledding hill, and then the ethno-botanical garden and how it kind of terraces into the side of that hillside there, connecting from Stewart Street up here on the north down into the central area of the park and a picnic area. More on the eastern side here, we have the Lakewood Gulch area and how it's somewhat expanded by pulling the main trail back a little bit and giving a little bit more space for nature play, for boulder terraces to go down to Lakewood Gulch so that people can enjoy the gulch, the water, and engage with it. We have picnic areas around it and a play structure here on the south side at the entrance to Raleigh Street that really elevates and kind of looks over the park in kind of an overlook fashion. We have the community garden here at Quitman, between Quitman and Perry on 9th Avenue for easy access. And this was obviously a strong desire that came out of the process. So just a few kind of highlights before we dig into the different components. So to first look at the overall circulation system of the park, the dark lines represent the paths within the park. The thicker ones are really the primary circulation. The thinner paths are secondary circulation, so they're probably narrower paths than the primary circulation. So just to show you guys a few things here, this is representative of the overall the existing trail, and it's actually realigned just slightly in that the trail today goes in this zone, and we pulled it back, as I mentioned, so that there's more space here at the gulch for kind of slower pedestrian paths and engagement and play within that gulch area. The yellow boxes at the end of the roadways represent this idea for kind of a shared cul-de-sac or entry plaza at those nodes. So to somehow formalize those entries to the park by creating kind of signage, having maybe a picnic table or a bench, nothing, not too many, because we know that is somewhat of a concern, but providing enough opportunities for picnic and easy access for folks so that they can enjoy the park in different areas. But also kind of taking back some of that area from the cars and the surface vehicles and making it more people friendly. We also have the existing pedestrian bridge. And then in this location, we have a new low flow crossing, which I will show you a picture of what that looks like. So these images are reflective of what a new low flow crossing would look like. Now, Cherry Creek is a little bit bigger than Lakewood Gulch, but I think this is representative of the idea. So it's a crossing where the water goes under, but in a storm event, the water actually overtops these crossings and flows right over. You don't have handrails or anything because that impedes kind of the water flow and the hydraulics of the channel itself. And it's frankly sits pretty low to the water as well. So you'll have kind of a rumble strip or something on the edge of this that signifies to a user if they're getting too close to the edge. But it does provide access over the water for bikes and pedestrians. Another element that is really important to this park is the tree canopy. And so we've worked really hard as part of the design to minimize impacts to the existing tree canopy and make sure that we are working around those really high value trees within the park. This diagram roughly shows those trees that are able to remain based on the design, trees that need to be removed, shown in the black dashed outline, and as well as invasive and unhealthy trees, some of which Mile High Flood District will actually take care of in their work coming up. There's some dead or very much dying trees out there that need to be maintained and cleared right now. And then a selection of new trees to provide kind of new spaces and different shade to areas such as within the ethnobotanical garden or around picnic areas so that they have shade. Another thing we heard through the process was a lot about lighting and signage. And so we've thought about that park-wide. The yellow circles here reflect the existing locations of lights. And the areas that are kind of circled in orange there are reflective of those priority areas for future lighting. So we have not gone in and identified exactly where the lighting will go. That will come in the next design phase, but this gives guidance to say where the lighting should be prioritized. So it's on the western side, it's in the Memorial Plaza, the shade structure around the playgrounds and the multi-sports court and the parking lot, as well as the Lakewood Gulch area and some of those picnic areas on the eastern side where people will want to gather and where we'll want to make sure that there's lighting for kind of safety and comfort for those in the park. Another thing that the park is very limited in the park today are benches and picnic tables, as I know you all know. And so this diagram here just shows and highlights some key areas where there will be additional picnic and seating areas. The intent here is that they are throughout the park, right? We have created big spaces, medium-sized spaces, small spaces for groups to gather, or small groups or large groups to gather, picnic, and enjoy their time at the park. So before I go into the detail of that, I just wanted to pause, Anna Claudia, and see if there are any questions coming through chat, or if anybody has a specific question on anything I just went through. Now would be a good time to maybe type it into chat, and so we can address it now.
Thank you, Meredith. We do have one question. We have here, where will be the bike trail? So if you can clarify that.
Great. I can clarify that. Let me go back to this slide. Can you guys see my cursor that I'm hovering over, or no? No? Okay, let me annotate. I'll just do this. 1 second. So the bike trail that exists today is essentially in this location here. And there's one, so it'll continue throughout the park. The one area that we're proposing removing it actually today goes right here. So it goes much closer to the Gulch. We are proposing kind of pulling it back into this zone here to give more space to the Lakewood Gulch area, nature play, and make it a little bit of a slower area. So you can see that the trail still goes right by. There's also kind of a picnic area right here, but it just pulls back a little bit. And the existing location of the trail where the dashed line is that you see becomes kind of a secondary path essentially. So it might have a textural or color change or be a slightly smaller path, kind of smaller in width.
That's all the questions for now.
Okay, great. So again, just this shows kind of the overall design, and I'm going to dive into the different areas and show you guys kind of the look and feel. So first and foremost, I think the park obviously being named after Joseph Martinez, we wanted to really highlight and bring him forward and celebrate who he was and what he stands for in a significant way. And this is a visualization of the Martinez kind of entry plaza, if you will, or the Memorial Entry Plaza. There's a little key map on the upper right that you can see the arrow points in the direction of this view. So this is essentially standing kind of right at 9th and Tennyson there, looking into the park. You can see these raised planters with kind of seat walls on the edges, a sign kind of celebrating with color the park and the name of the park. And within these planters, we have memorial kind of signs, essentially, that speak to kind of the history of him and what he stands for. And you can see, I'm just trying to highlight them now to point them out, that it kind of tells his story in a way throughout the plaza. So it provides space for gathering, reflection, but also a place for people to move through and enter the park. And so it really brings him forth and celebrates him and what, the importance of what he stands for. In the background here, you can see the open lawn and also the shade structure here. So this larger structure reflects kind of a shade structure that can be for everyday use, where you're sitting and eating under it, picnicking, gathering, but it also can host events. And so it is really kind of on the edge between the multi-use lawn and also the plaza. So it gets a lot of use in that way. And then on the right here, you can see the playground kind of peeking through and some of the color and the play elements. And so the composition of these elements together, the plaza, the Memorial Plaza, the gathering underneath the shade structure of the pavilion, and the play elements creates a really great activation on the western edge of the park.
Meredith, I do have a question here on this photo.
Yep.
Someone's asking how long is the planter, what's the distance, and if you can skate on it.
I'm going to lean on Will. I know you're on the phone to maybe answer the distance question, but on the planters and skating, these would not be for skating. We would want to make sure that so that the planters themselves will, maintain and stay intact. It'll be really important that they are designed in such a way that skating is discouraged on the edges of the wall. So, and then the distance question, Will, can you speak to the size of them? I think you might have a...
Yeah, no problem. Some of them are relatively large, in upwards of, I guess if you kind of took a length, since it's rolled around, maybe 30 or 40 feet. But as Meredith mentioned, as we refine kind of the design, we would think of an artful way to kind of deter skating through, whether it's, little fins or whether it's, little bumps in the actual surfacing so that it just deters that sort of behavior. So we're thinking about it. Yep.
Hold on 1 second. Okay. Going to the next one. This one looks at the multi-use lawn and the kind of cultural play area, signature play area on the bottom right there. So this steps you a little bit further into the park. Again, if you look at the key map up here, You can see the larger multi-use lawn beyond, the shade structure that kind of is peeking through on this edge here, and then the larger play area here on the bottom right. What this shows is an indication of, this is actually like the sombrero slide, kind of bringing that back into the design, and we'll ask some questions about that, but you can see that it really is kind of about play and exploration and color. And again, the pairing of kind of the lawn and the playground and the gathering area under the shade structure, again, kind of brings this area to life. Just checking the questions. I will get to see the fruit trees, which we will get to in a few minutes.
Mayor, we did have one question about if you could give a brief introduction of our veteran, Joseph P. Martinez.
Yes, let's see. Just gonna try to pull up. He was the first Hispanic Medal of Honor recipient, I believe. And so we have been we've been working on trying to do a little bit more digging on the research on him and what that memorial will have within it that really kind of celebrates him and his significance. What we have heard through the process is that the importance of educating youth and the community on what he accomplished, and it's something to really kind of aspire and strive to for many. So that's what he stands for. The memorial that there is in the park today does not, I think it got vandalized and removed at one point or stolen at one point, and the location of it is unknown. So we will be, working through as the design advances on exactly what the memorial will say about him and bring to light within that. Anna Claudia, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, I think the reference of his heritage really speaks to this community here, and we'll do our best to honor that and then celebrate his life and the sacrifice that he made. And this is what our commitment to this process was. And if anyone would like to send us any pictures, if you have any relative that's still alive that you like to connect us, we'd love to meet them and talk to them and brainstorm ideas that we can bring even more significant celebration of his life into the memorial when we are advancing this component of the park into design development next year.
Great. So with that, as we think about the playground and what it means to have a signature and cultural playground, we wanted to ask you all, the themes that really seem to resonate with you. What best represents the community as we get more into the design of the playground in the future? On the left, you can see ideas around having more of a playground that has more of a cultural component. So this is an image of that sombrero slide. I believe this is the one in Bear Creek. Cowboy boots, you have, all of the kind of components there. In the middle, showing food. And while these aren't, exactly what we're thinking, you can see that we can take the idea of food and whatever that looks like and turn it into playful elements within a playground. And then on the right, we have music. And so while Paco Sanchez does bring that forward, and you can see the image in the upper left, there are many different ways to bring that forward into the design of a playground. So I wanted to pause for a minute, and I'm going to pop up a polling question for you guys where you can select your preference on these, really on the playground theme that seems to best represent your community.
And while people are responding to this question, we do have a senior resident within the surrounding community that's asking if this park new design will become more senior friendly. And Jaime also said the statue of Joseph P. Martinez was removed and redone in bronze, and the statue now is in the Capitol step. So thank you, Jaime, for that information for folks that would like to visit the statue. And that's the only question that we have right now.
Great. So while folks are doing that polling on the addressing kind of the seniors within the park, it's something that we've thought a lot about through the design because there is the senior housing nearby, and we want to make sure that the park accommodates all ages. So the young and the old and everything in between and all abilities, which is why we have a few things to highlight. Walking paths around the park. So we have the loops for short distances, for longer distances, the idea of having a lot of seating throughout the park, seating and picnicking areas. And then we also have fitness stations on that western side of the park near the playground so that more active older adults can use those, as well as other spaces like the ethnobotanical garden that I'll get into more. So the idea is that it's very accessible with lots of seating and places to kind of walk, gather, and be as active so that folks can be as active as they want to be in the park. Okay, I'm going to pause and end that polling. Show you guys the results. So hopefully you can see the results now. So the majority of people, just over half, did say that the cultural playground was what seemed to resonate best and be most aligned with the community desires and priorities, music being a not too distant second. So I think as we will certainly document this as part of the master plan, and we will be getting hopefully some additional feedback through the online survey as well, which we will compile with this as we put forth the recommendation in the plan. So thank you. This other element of the ethnobotanical garden is one that we've talked a lot about, and it really has resonated very well with everyone throughout the process. As I mentioned before, you can see where it's located in this key map, where that red dot is, but basically where the memorial is today, just kind of north of that in that hillside area. This image on the bottom right shows how you can create kind of terracing and walking paths down a slope that become planted with plantings and fruit trees. I know there was a question about where the fruit trees, this would be where the fruit trees are, and many other plants that are more culturally relevant to the neighborhood that we will be finding out and investigating more about in the next phase of design, the exact kind of plant materials and palettes. But that is the location of this and kind of the idea behind it. So it can also have playful elements such as this image in the top right, but it's really a kind of a botanic garden that brings forth the culture of the community. This image here is showing the tree grove and picnic area that is near Lakewood Gulch. So the trail here that goes in the middle of the view here is the Lakewood Gulch, the multi-use trail that cuts through the park. You can see this great large kind of picnic area, so it can accommodate big groups, it can accommodate a couple smaller groups, and it overlooks the lawn for kids and families to play in, as well as the nature play here on the bottom of the screen. And then just kind of off the left to the left of the screen is Lakewood Gulch. I'm going to pause for just a second And I gotta get the interpreter.
I saw that you saw that, Mary, and when you're ready for another question.
Well, I was trying to get the interpreter. I know the second interpreter came on. I think I have to stop the sharing to do that. Do we need it? Anna Claudia, do I need to do that?
She has not indicated on my end.
Okay. If you tell Jorge that I think it requires me to actually stop sharing to do that. So let me know if I need to. Okay.
Estella, I already accept you, and if you could speak up and let us know what you need.
Yes.
Okay. And so I know many of you are probably anxious to know, what is the look and feel of Lakewood Gulch and how are we bringing people down to that area? This image is reflective of that idea. Large boulder terraces kind of into the embankments of the gulch that allow people to sit and gather and step down to the gulch. The idea of this is that we have them in about 2, 3, 4 key locations in that bend at the gulch, so that there are kind of key points to go down and touch the water. Smaller in scale, so it's not the entire edge there, but where we can keep many of the trees in place and still get the boulders in and kind of get down to the water. You can see here kind of in the background of the image, I'm going to annotate again, that this here is the main trail. And then this one right here is kind of that secondary trail that goes along the upper banks of the gulch, where you would be able to access places like this and sit down and experience the water's edge and the gulch.
And Mary, this is timely with one question pending here. Do we know the quality of the water running through the gulch?
You may be better answering that than me, but I believe that what Sensei had shared before, based on the water quality, is that it is actually it's okay here, and that further studies were happening with on kind of the water quality to inform some of that, but that yes, it is okay. All the levels in the water are fine in this area. These images reflect the playground and overlook area on the south side of the park. So where Raleigh Street comes in and terminates in that parking lot, the idea is to create a small gathering space for picnicking, for gathering, and for play. Because you're at the top of the bank, kind of overlooking the park there, the thought is to get an overlook structure that would be probably open up top. It wouldn't have a solid top like this, but kind of look over the edge of the, into the gulch area, over the park. And it really is a play element for probably older children, not as much younger children, but there would also be kind of surrounding nature play within that area too. So back to the overall plan, I think one thing we really want to hear from you all tonight is what your priorities are in the plan. So you heard a lot tonight about the different spaces within the park, the different places. We want to understand what your top priorities are so that it can inform the phasing. And essentially what that means is what gets built first. Is the desire to build the Memorial Plaza, is there a stronger preference for that right of way, or is it really Lakewood Gulch, or is it both of them? Hearing from you guys tonight will really help inform how we recommend phasing the design and construction of the park, because it will likely need to be in multiple phases. So with that, was there a question first? I was gonna do the other poll to gather feedback, but was there a question first, Anna Claudia?
We don't have any questions, but there is a note here to make Stella the interpreter as 6:30 in 5 minutes.
Okay, let's do this, and then I think we'll be able to go to Q&A. She can jump in. Okay, you guys are gonna see this pop up. So the question asks, which park areas would you like to see built first, right? So it's really, what are your top priorities? What are you most excited about? Is it the Memorial Plaza, the signature playground, the ethno-botanical garden, picnic areas, Lakewood Gulch, community garden, or is it something that's not on this list? So there are many other things in this within the park that aren't in these 6 options. So if there's something not listed here that really is your top priority, please let us know and we can talk through that in the Q&A. So on this one, you should be able to select multiple things. I would say select your top 2 or 3 preferences. That'll help us prioritize. So just a few more seconds. I see a few more people responding. Or certainly if there's just one, it's fine to just select one as well. Okay, maybe another 5 seconds. Any last thoughts? Okay, let me share the results. So Memorial Plaza came as the top one, and everything else is, you know, it's the picnic areas come in second, but between Signature Playground, Ethno-Botanical Garden, and the Lakewood Gulch area seem equally weighted. The community garden not too far after that, but clearly the Memorial Plaza kind of comes to the top here. So that's great feedback as we get into the phasing and prioritization. Again, we will be answering or asking these same questions online. So if you have friends or family that are not able to attend tonight and can take the online survey and answer the same question, so we get more feedback from the community, please let them know. Great. So before we get to Q&A, I just wanted to touch on where we are in the process and the next steps. So you can see here, we have gotten to the end of the process. We have had, including tonight, 3 public meetings, steering committee meetings, as I mentioned, lots of outreach previously. We have developed the preferred plan concept, and we'll make any modifications based on anything that comes out of tonight or the online survey. But it's really now our focus is documenting all these recommendations and putting together the master plan itself, which will serve as the guidance for design. And the phase 1 design is estimated to begin next year. Again, it's subject to change. And I think Anna Claudia can jump in and talk about this in a little more detail. The construction would be estimated in 2023. Again, it's an estimated date and it could change, but that's the best of everybody's knowledge at this point. That construction would be again for phase 1, which is why the prioritization of what the community desires are is so important. So Anna Claudia, do you want to mention anything or add anything there?
Yeah, absolutely. As some of you may know, our 2021 budget is still under review. Right now, we are in City Council review and approval, and soon we'll know if our phase one for Martinez is fully funded. We're still going through the process, and we are confident that we're gonna get an answer this year, very soon, and then we can start the work for phase one very shortly. I do want to address Jaime comment on the budget. Even though this project is very ambitious with the amount of amenities, it is going to be moved ahead within the means of the agency to build it. We also want to ask for a little bit of patience as we as a city reflect on the impacts of the COVID-19, which does impact our budgets as well. And we'll keep the committee informed as we learn more. But as of today, we do plan to build this project when fund becomes available, and then we'll go through the process of prioritization in the next few years.
Great. So with that, I think what we can do is open it up for questions and answers. And it may be best if folks put a question or something in chat, and then we can call on you, and you can unmute yourself and ask your question. I am going to pause for just a second though, and add the interpreter. So I think I apologize, I'm gonna stop sharing and then I'll reshare my screen. The call will continue. So we have, Anna Claudia, can you remind me of the name of the other interpreter?
Her name is Estella.
Oh, never mind, I see it. Okay. All right, we should be good to go. Let me get back to sharing my screen. Thank you for your patience, everybody. So what other questions do you guys have? Anything that doesn't seem like it, feedback that was provided and doesn't resonate, or something that is even better than you had ever anticipated through the process? Jaime, were you going to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. It's really, I just wanted to say that I was very surprised to see it after, all of our in-person meetings, trying to figure out where to have meetings, and then having to create meetings. I just want to give you guys, instead of doing the clap thing, just wanted to do the actual clap. It was a lot of work. And I guess some of the things I think about are like the budget. Obviously, I mentioned that. And then like some of the infrastructure, and not just like sidewalks and the clearing, but like, are the plants going to be like established first? You had that poll about, is the community garden or the memorial there? And then I guess the other kind of question I had with like how you get things prioritized, is it part of the infrastructure where those funds go first, including like the planting of trees so they can mature? And then my second question about kind of the gardens and stuff like that is the accessibility to everyone, because there's a lot of sensory type things here, like fruit trees and stuff like that. And so I just wanted to ask that accessibility question as well.
Yeah, good question. So on the accessibility front, and I assume you're referring more specifically to that ethnobotanical garden area. So that we did look at the slopes of that kind of hillside there, and we can get in an ADA accessible path along that hillside there, which is why it becomes kind of more a terraced path that goes down the hillside, and the gardens are really kind of intertwined with those terraces. So The idea certainly is that it would be accessible to everybody and have opportunities for seating and just kind of to enjoy that area. Your question about, I think it's more about kind of phasing and construction, and you mentioned trees and the growth, bigger trees. We are going to be looking into the phasing in more detail once we have kind of clear priorities from the community to understand what makes sense. It likely doesn't make sense to do some stuff over at Lakewood Gulch and then the Memorial Plaza just because of the location of them and how you would phase something like that. But it makes sense a lot of times to do kind of one area and then another area. So Paco, if you think about how that was done, one bigger area and then another area, similar kind of idea. The trees, new trees that are planted, unfortunately, are generally smaller. They typically have a greater chance of survival if they actually are younger trees than planting a really, really large tree. But thankfully the park has so many large existing trees that if we have some newer, younger ones, it'll obviously take them time to grow in, but it'll hopefully feel a little bit more blended. So we'll be studying that more, or it will be studied more in future phases. So. Great.
Thank you. Just one more quick. This won't have an art budget like Paco Sanchez Park did, correct?
This park will likely trigger a 1% art dedication to the park. It's likely to happen, yes. And I answered some of these questions in the chat directly, but I just wanted to voice here while people gather some thoughts and questions. We did have a question here if the commuter trail will be closed in construction time. We will work with our design and construction team and the team that's going to be involved in the construction to create detours for that commuter trail. I don't have any details of that yet, but likely we always provide detour opportunities for the community when a major trail like this is impacted. Another question here about the harvesting of the fruit trees. We'll work with our forestry team and the community of the best method for harvesting and sharing the harvest with the community. That to be determined. We'll get a more strategic planning on that in the next phase of the design as well.
Yeah, and then I see the question about, is there a way to design a park in a way to deter vandalism? Mm-hmm. There are certainly design strategies, both kind of big scale and small scale that can be addressed, and I'll give you a few. This is kind of the way we think about design, about public parks and public spaces, about safety, vandalism, all those things. Having lighting and visibility are really two very important things. It's not only for the safety and comfort, but it also helps deter vandalism. More specifically on things like shade structures or a pavilion, there's ways to have electrical outlets, but keep them up high so that they're out of the way and they're locked and way up high so people aren't using them. There's coatings that you can put on signage and things like that, and on surfaces so that paint doesn't stick. So there are a lot of techniques, as I said, kind of both big and small, that can help deter and prevent some of that vandalism. While it certainly isn't always perfect, we can do a lot of things as we think through the design, which will definitely happen. So will there be lighting added near the underpass of Perry? If there is, it's something that we've been talking about and looking into. There's actually a couple other city projects happening right now that we are going to kind of learn from and see if some of that lighting actually helps. We have had some of those conversations. that could be, we could actually include some of the underpass lighting or nearby lighting as part of one of those recommended areas, if that's something that we hear. So please, add that to the chat or let us know if that's what you're referring to specifically, whether it's under the underpass or whether it's kind of on the entry points on either side. So with the homeless, are there any plans to kind of prevent them or not have them camping along the gulch? As we know, this is an issue in many areas today. It's a challenge citywide. And what's happening in those areas near the gulch is that there's a lot of understory brush that is quite dense and you can't really see through it. Part of what Mile High Flood District will be doing and the recommendations within the plan as well will be to clear out some of that brush, clear out not only the dead trees, but look at some of that brush so that there's greater visibility into those areas. That is kind of one of the key things you can do to deter that, but certainly it's not a guarantee. From kind of the design side. So, Anna Claudia, if you want to add anything to that, feel free.
Yeah, I would like to add that we're going to be working with our parks rangers to really look at strategically how we can improve some of the things that we can incorporate in the design to help them to monitor the park. And of course, the residents within Villa Park, we also count on you to let us know if you see any issues. So if you can stay vigilant and keep your eyes on the park and notify our park rangers when you see an issue, that helps us to act fastly when there is an issue, and we can let our rangers know and then work with you guys on that. So we are always looking for ways to improve our communication between the community and our rangers, and we hope that we can continue that moving forward as well.
Great. I see a question that I'm hoping that Tori,
yeah,
maybe Noah.
is asking about the water. The water in the picture, if we have water quickly, how deep it is, and can you get in the river?
Well, that's a great question. This view here is actually, this rendering is a combination of an existing photo and proposed improvement. So the water you see here is the actual water in the gulch. I believe this picture, Yishen or Will, correct me, this was one of the recent pictures, correct?
Yeah, so I took it maybe 2 weeks ago.
So reflective of the current conditions of Lakewood Gulch. And, the reason why that's important is sometimes seasonally there's more water in the gulch in the springtime and maybe less right now, but you can see there's water. It is not very deep. Maybe a foot or so in places. I have not actually walked fully in the gulch, but it's definitely, it's not too deep, but definitely something you can kind of walk and splash around in. Any other questions or comments, thoughts that you guys have? One thing I've learned with these virtual meetings is that when you don't hear anything, you have to take it as a good sign. So we'll assume that everyone really loves it, and you don't have any questions if you're not asking, but let us know if you do.
So so it's already out to the planning board, did you say, or it's already out to the city, or how does that, what was that? I'm sorry, you had it in it's in a certain state right now on that little chart you showed. So this is going to city council, or they already have it?
Are you referring to our city budget,
No, so we're
the
in
master plan?
the master plan. So
So this master plan here does not need to be approved by city council
I
on
heard,
the budget that will fund phase one.
I guess I was looking for September. I mean, I'm sorry, October, November of this map. I didn't. I thought you had said something where this plan exists. What's the next? October, November, December.
So for the next steps for this plan, as we finalize the master plan document itself, we will do a next round internally of vetting of these recommendations. We do have some internal expertise to consult to make sure that our design, it is buildable and then it is feasible. So we'll continue to do that work internally. As far as next step, we should know by the end of the year if our phase one design development was approved by city council. And then I'm talking about the budget request for funding phase one design development. It is it's going through the process of city council approval right now. So once we know that confirmation that phase one is funded, we'll proceed with procurement of the design team that will be hired to take the design development with construction dollars, with construction documents. So then we can start planning prioritization for construction dollars in the future years. I hope that answered your question. Let me know if you need more clarification.
Right, now I understand. Now I understand what you're talking about. You're talking about the city council's currently going through their budget,
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Sorry about the confusion.
Yes, correct. Thank you.
Anna Claudia, I see the question about if I want to contact a forest ranger, what number? Do you have that number offhand?
I don't have the number offhand, but you can look it up in our website. Let me do a quick search right here and I'll post it on the chat if I can find it handy.
I was thinking 311 as well.
311 as well. 311 will redirect your concern to rangers, but if you need attention right away, I'll suggest calling the non-emergency number from our police department. And our rangers do have a number that you can also call, and let me find out what that is.
Thanks, Jaime.
I assume they mean park ranger.
Good point. Yes, I'd assume so too.
Thank you, Jaime. That link that Jaime posted on the chat, it will guide you to how to contact the park ranger so that you can have a timely response to whatever issue you may have. If you need even more immediate assistance, we suggest contact our police department.
Great. Any other questions? I'll go to the next slide and write anything in chat that you have. But what we are doing, as I mentioned before, we are getting any final feedback or comments on the preferred plan by next Friday. So it is it's about a week window that we have to collect feedback so that we have time to wrap up the plan and things can keep moving. There will be an online survey that's posted. Here is Anna Claudia's email address. You can always email her. How will they get access to the online survey? Will it just be on the city's website?
Yes, we're going to be sharing the link through our city website. We're also going to be giving the link and the presentation content here to our city council office so she can also make available in her social media. We're also going to be posting on the information through the RNOs and Nextdoor and all means of communication. Jesus, do you like to add to how we are sharing, or did I cover everything on our end?
No, I think you thoroughly covered it.
So if anyone have issues finding the information online, you can always call, you can always email me, and I'll direct you to the content and give you access to the information that you need to put in your final thoughts that will help us to finalize this plan in a high mark.
Great. Well, that's all from us tonight. We'll stick around for a few minutes if you guys have any last questions. But thank you so much for joining us and asking questions and providing feedback, and most importantly, being engaged in this process, because we are very excited about this park and the future of the park, and it's really for you guys. And so thank you for your engagement and throughout the entire process.
And Jaime, to your question, yes, we can make this recording available, and we just need to prep the video. There's some admin stuff that we need to do in order to become available for the public. So we'll definitely let you have access so you can share with your community coming up meeting that you have. And we also will share this slide deck as well, so you can also share. I want to take the opportunity here to say a huge thank you for our steering committee members that dedicated so much time and effort to work with us in so many meetings. And it was a snow blizzard at some point, it was late meetings, but they always show up to those working meetings with a lot of energy, with a lot of good thoughts, with a lot of questions. And I want to commend you for your hard work with us in creating this process, being part of this process, and really sharing this results that we have right now of this effort. You know, I want to say thank you very much. I appreciate you, and it was an honor to work with you guys. And I also want to say a huge thank you to our Councilwoman Mentor's office. Herself showed so much dedication and leadership to really prioritize this project to be in consideration for City Council budget right now. It's because of her leadership this project made it this far. So thank you so much. I also want to thank her staff for working with us so much throughout the process. You guys rock, and it's an honor to work with you as well. Thank you so much. I'm so blessed to have this group that means so much for the community as well, to have you guys working with us. So thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, everyone.